A Fortune 500 industrial company's finance team produces a 47-page quarterly report. Revenue trends, margin analysis, working capital metrics, segment performance, every number precise to the penny. The CEO reads it, nods, files it. Same company, different CFO. The quarterly finance deliverable is now a 12-page decision brief. 3 strategic scenarios with quantified trade-offs. 4 investment options rank ordered by risk-adjusted return. Real-time competitive positioning versus 2 key rivals. And a section no one had seen before, decisions required this quarter, specific choices the executive team needed to make, with finance's recommended path and the data supporting it. The CEO doesn't file this one. She acts on it. What changed? The numbers didn't get more accurate. The accounting didn't improve. What changed was the CFO's conception of the job itself. Finance stopped asking, what happened, and started asking, what should we do? That shift, from scorekeeper to strategist, from historian to decision architect, is the transformation we're exploring today. I'm Nakel Nakima, and this is the Intelligence Edge. Joining me today are 4 leaders who are living this transformation, shaping finance into the decision intelligence hub of their organizations. First, Dr. Lien Zhou, who has advised CFOs across Asia-Pacific's largest enterprises on embedding AI into financial planning and analysis. She's seen how the fastest-moving finance functions are redefining their mandate. Welcome back, Dr. Zhou.
Thank you, Nakel. This topic is at the center of what I advise on daily.
Next, Maria Alvarez, whose work in data governance has increasingly intersected with finance transformation. She understands how data quality and governance form the foundation that strategic finance requires. Welcome, Maria.
Thanks, excited to explore this angle.
We're also joined by Jonas Richter, who has worked extensively with European CFOs navigating regulatory complexity while building forward-looking intelligence capabilities. He brings perspective on how compliance and strategy intersect in the modern finance function. Welcome, Jonas.
Looking forward to this conversation.
And finally, Kwame Mensah, who has built financial decision systems for high-growth organizations across Africa, contexts where CFOs often must be strategists from day one because the infrastructure for backward-looking reporting barely exists. Welcome, Kwame.
Great to be here.
Let me open with a framing question. The traditional CFO role centered on stewardship, accurate books, financial controls, regulatory compliance. Now we're saying CFOs should own decision infrastructure. That's a significant expansion. Dr. Zhou, is this realistic? Can finance actually take on this mandate?
Not only can they, in many organizations, they're the only function positioned to do so. Consider what finance already has: enterprise-wide data access, cross-functional visibility, a mandate for objectivity, quantitative rigor, and, critically, the attention of the CEO and board. No other function combines these assets. The question isn't whether finance can be the decision intelligence hub. The question is whether finance will claim that role or cede it to others, consultants, technology vendors, or fragmented analytics teams scattered across the organization.
Maria, does the data foundation exist for this expanded role?
In most organizations, not yet. And that's both the challenge and the opportunity. Finance has traditionally owned financial data, transactional records, general ledger, reporting hierarchies. But strategic decision-making requires operational data, market data, customer data, supply chain data. Finance doesn't typically own or govern these. The CFOs making this transition are simultaneously expanding their data domain. They're not just consuming data from other functions, they're setting standards, demanding quality, and in many cases, building the enterprise data infrastructure that strategic intelligence requires.
Jonas, does this expanded mandate create new risks?
It creates accountability for outcomes, which many finance functions have historically avoided. When you're a scorekeeper, you report what happened. Someone else is responsible for making it happen. When you're a strategist, you're recommending actions. If the action fails, questions come back to you. This isn't a reason to avoid the mandate. It's a reason to approach it with appropriate rigor. The CFOs succeeding in this transition are explicit about the assumptions behind their recommendations, the uncertainties involved, and the decision frameworks they're applying. They're not pretending to have certainty they don't have.
Kwame, you mentioned that in many African markets, CFOs must be strategists from the start. What can established enterprises learn from that?
The constraint teaches clarity. When you don't have 18 months of historical data, you can't rely on trend analysis. You have to reason from first principles. What are the economics of this decision? What are the key uncertainties? What would have to be true for this to succeed? That's strategic thinking. It doesn't require sophisticated systems, it requires clear frameworks. Many CFOs in resource-rich environments have the opposite problem. They have so much data that they analyze endlessly without deciding. The data becomes a crutch, not a tool. The lesson: strategic finance isn't about having more data. It's about framing decisions clearly and using data to resolve key uncertainties. That mindset doesn't require enterprise-scale investment.
Let's trace this evolution more explicitly. What was the CFO's role, what is it becoming, and why is this shift happening now?
I see 4 eras. Era 1, the controller. Through the 1980s, the CFO was primarily a chief accountant. The job was accuracy, reliable books, clean audits, regulatory compliance. Success meant no surprises. The CFO looked backward almost exclusively. Era 2, the treasurer. In the 1990s and 2000s, capital allocation rose in importance. CFOs became responsible for capital structure, investor relations, M&A financing. The job expanded to include balance sheet optimization. Still primarily backward-looking, but with forward implications. Era 3, the business partner. The 2010s saw finance embedding in operations. FP&A became more sophisticated. CFOs were expected to understand the business, not just the numbers. Partnership with operating leaders became expected. This introduced forward-looking elements, planning, forecasting, but still primarily in support of decisions others made. Era 4, the strategist. Now, the CFO is expected to shape strategic choices, not just quantify them. Own the decision infrastructure, not just the reporting infrastructure. Measure outcomes, not just inputs. This is where leading organizations are moving.
What's driving this fourth transition? Why now?
3 forces. First, data abundance. The information to make better decisions exists in most organizations, it's just not organized for decision-making. Someone needs to organize it. Finance has the mandate and the analytical capability. Second, strategic velocity. Competitive cycles are compressing. Annual planning is too slow. Organizations need continuous strategic calibration. Finance already runs the planning cadence, extending it to strategic recalibration is natural. Third, CEO expectations. CEOs increasingly want their CFO to be a strategic partner, not a reporter. When McKinsey surveys CEOs about what they want from their CFO, strategic insight consistently ranks above financial accuracy. The demand is pulling CFOs into this role.
Maria, how does this evolution change finance's relationship with data?
Fundamentally, traditional finance data management was about compliance, retain records, satisfy auditors, meet regulatory requirements. The data model was the chart of accounts, hierarchical, standardized, backward-looking. Strategic finance requires a different data model. Decisions don't map to chart of accounts. They map to markets, customers, products, capabilities. The data model needs to reflect how decisions are actually structured, not how transactions are recorded. This means finance must either build new data infrastructure or, more commonly, become the integrator and governor of data assets owned elsewhere. The CFO becomes the de facto chief data officer for decision-relevant information.
Is that a formal trend? CFOs taking on CDO responsibilities?
Well, not hell, formally, it's rare. Functionally, it's common. I've seen multiple organizations where the CDO technically exists but the CFO effectively controls the data agenda. Why? Because finance has budget authority, cross-functional mandate, and board-level accountability. When push comes to shove, the CFO's data priorities win. The smartest CFOs recognize this and staff accordingly. They're building data engineering and data governance capabilities within finance, not waiting for central data teams to deliver.
Jonas, how does regulatory evolution affect this transition?
Regulation is actually accelerating the shift to strategic finance. Consider ESG reporting requirements now in effect in Europe. These aren't just disclosure rules, they require forward-looking assessments. Climate risk exposure, sustainability targets, transition planning. This is inherently strategic, and it falls to the CFO. The same is true for AI governance requirements. Many jurisdictions now require risk assessments, bias audits, and impact documentation for high-stakes automated decisions. CFOs are being asked to quantify and oversee these risks. Far from constraining the CFO to a compliance role, regulation is pushing CFOs into strategic territory. You can't comply with these requirements without strategic thinking.
Kwame, how do you see this evolution in high-growth markets?
In markets with less institutional infrastructure, CFOs often start in Era 4 by necessity. When I work with fintech companies in Lagos or Nairobi, the CFO isn't maintaining legacy systems and producing compliance reports. They're building from scratch. The question isn't, how do we report what happened? It's, what decisions do we need to make, and what information would help us make them? That's the strategist mindset from day one. And it often produces leaner, more decision-relevant financial operations than what I see in established enterprises. The lesson for mature organizations: imagine you had to rebuild your finance function from scratch, optimizing for strategic decision support. What would you build? Probably not what you have today.
Let's get concrete about what owning the decision infrastructure means in practice. What does finance actually do differently when it becomes the decision intelligence hub? Kwame, you've built these systems. Walk us through the architecture.
I think about it in 3 layers. Layer 1, decision inventory and ownership. The finance function maintains the authoritative list of significant decisions, what they are, who owns them, what cadence they follow, and what information they require. This sounds basic, but most organizations don't have it. Decisions happen ad hoc, owned by whoever happens to be in the room. Finance creates structure. Here are the 50 decisions that materially affect enterprise value. Here's who owns each one. Here's when each one occurs. Here's the minimum information required to make each one well. Layer 2, decision-relevant information assembly. For each significant decision, finance ensures the right information is assembled and delivered to the right decision-maker at the right time. This isn't traditional reporting, it's curated intelligence packages tailored to specific decisions. For a pricing decision, competitive positioning, margin impact analysis, demand elasticity estimates, customer segment implications. For a capital allocation decision, risk-adjusted returns across options, strategic fit assessment, resource constraint analysis, scenario modeling. Finance becomes the curator, not just the producer. They're pulling from across the enterprise, synthesizing, and delivering insight, not just numbers. Layer 3, outcome measurement and learning. After decisions are made, finance tracks outcomes against expectations. Did the pricing change produce the expected margin improvement? Did the capital allocation deliver projected returns? This closes the loop. It converts decisions from one-time events into a learning system. Over time, the organization gets better at predicting outcomes and calibrating confidence.
Dr. Zhou, what capabilities does finance need to operate this way?
4 capability shifts. First, from accounting to economics. Traditional finance thinks in accounting terms, debits, credits, GAAP categories. Strategic finance thinks in economic terms, marginal costs, opportunity costs, option values. The analytical frame is different. Second, from reporting to storytelling. The output shifts from tables to narratives. Revenue was $47 million, becomes, revenue underperformed expectations by $3 million, primarily driven by delayed product launch in APAC, which we recommend addressing by accelerating Q3 marketing investment. The numbers are embedded in a decision-relevant story. Third, from precision to calibration. Traditional finance prizes accuracy to the penny. Strategic finance prizes calibrated uncertainty. We estimate NPV between $12 million and $18 million with 70% confidence is more useful than $14.7 million NPV with false precision. This requires probabilistic thinking that many finance teams haven't developed. Fourth, from independence to partnership. The traditional finance posture was deliberate independence. We report objectively, we don't take sides. Strategic finance must partner deeply with operations while maintaining analytical integrity. That's a harder balance.
Maria, how does governance support this capability shift?
Governance becomes the trust layer. Strategic finance recommendations are only valuable if stakeholders trust them. Trust requires transparency about data sources, methodologies, and assumptions. That's governance. When finance says, "We recommend option A based on our analysis," decision-makers need confidence that the underlying data is accurate, the models are sound, and the assumptions are reasonable. Governance provides that confidence. I advise finance leaders to invest heavily in decision audit trails. Document not just what you recommended, but why, what data you used, what assumptions you made, what alternatives you considered. This creates accountability and enables learning.
Jonas, how do you ensure this expanded role maintains appropriate controls?
The key is separating the strategic advisory function from the control function. Finance has traditionally served as a check on other functions, preventing excess spending, ensuring compliance, maintaining fiscal discipline. That control function must continue. The strategic function is different. It's about shaping decisions, not constraining them. These can coexist, but they require clear boundaries. In practice, I recommend structural separation. The FP&A and strategic finance team that advises on decisions is distinct from the controllership function that ensures compliance. They collaborate, but they have different mandates and different reporting relationships. Without this separation, you risk 2 failure modes. Either control contaminates strategy, every recommendation becomes risk-averse, or strategy undermines control. Finance becomes an advocate rather than a check.
Let me probe on something. If finance becomes the decision intelligence hub, what happens to the analytics teams that already exist in marketing, operations, supply chain? Are we creating conflict?
If implemented poorly, yes. If implemented well, no. The model isn't finance doing all analytics. It's finance orchestrating decision-relevant analytics. Functional teams retain deep domain expertise. Marketing analytics still understands attribution models better than finance. Supply chain analytics still understands demand planning better than finance. Finance's role is integration and decision framing. They ensure that functional analytics connect to enterprise-level decisions. They translate domain insights into financial implications. They arbitrate when functional perspectives conflict. This requires a collaborative posture from finance, not an imperial one. The CFO who says, "We're taking over analytics," will fail. The CFO who says, "We're connecting analytics to decisions," can succeed.
Kwame Mensah.
I'll add a technical point. What finance often builds isn't analytical capability, it's decision infrastructure. The platforms, workflows, and processes that route insights to decisions. Functional teams generate insights. Finance ensures those insights reach the right decisions at the right time. That's a distinct capability that doesn't duplicate what functional teams do.
This transformation sounds compelling, but it must face resistance. What obstacles do CFOs encounter when pursuing this mandate? Maria, what are the organizational barriers?
3 consistent patterns. First, legacy systems and data debt. Most finance functions run on systems designed for transaction processing and compliance reporting, not decision support. SAP, Oracle Financials, legacy ERP, these are incredibly difficult to extract insight from. CFOs spend significant budget just getting data out of their own systems. Second, talent mismatch. The skills for traditional finance, accounting accuracy, compliance expertise, audit management, are different from the skills for strategic finance, data science, business partnering, scenario modeling. Most finance teams are staffed for the old model. Reskilling takes years. Third, cultural identity. Many finance professionals chose finance precisely because they valued objectivity, precision, and independence. The strategic mandate asks them to be advocates, to make recommendations under uncertainty, to be wrong sometimes. That's uncomfortable. Some actively resist.
Jonas, how do regulatory constraints create obstacles?
The primary constraint is time and attention. Regulatory compliance consumes enormous finance resources. In Europe, between GDPR, the AI Act, ESG reporting requirements, tax transparency rules, and ongoing audit demands, compliance can consume 60 to 70% of finance capacity in regulated industries. That leaves limited bandwidth for strategic transformation. CFOs want to build decision intelligence capabilities, but they're drowning in compliance obligations. The answer isn't to ignore compliance that creates larger problems. The answer is compliance efficiency. Automate what can be automated. Standardize processes. Build once, use many times. Free up capacity by doing compliance better, not by doing less of it.
Dr. Zhou, what resistance comes from other functions?
The most common resistance is turf protection. When finance starts assembling decision-relevant information across functions, other leaders may feel encroached upon. Why is finance asking for my marketing data? Why is finance weighing in on supply chain decisions? Stay in your lane. This resistance is strongest where finance has historically been adversarial, playing gotcha on budget overruns, challenging expense requests, delaying approvals. If finance is seen as a police function, expansion into strategic territory feels like expanded policing. The CFO must actively repair these relationships before expanding scope. Demonstrate partnership. Share credit. Celebrate functional wins. Build trust before building infrastructure.
Kwame, what are the technical obstacles?
First, integration complexity. Decision intelligence requires connecting systems that were never designed to connect. Financial systems, operational systems, external data sources, analytical platforms. Every connection is a custom project. Second, real-time expectations versus batch reality. Strategic decisions often benefit from current information, but most financial data is batch processed, closed monthly, reported quarterly. Accelerating financial data to decision-relevant timelines requires significant infrastructure investment. Third, analytical sophistication gaps. Decision intelligence requires scenario modeling, Monte Carlo simulation, predictive analytics, sensitivity analysis. Most finance systems are designed for deterministic calculations, this number plus that number equals result. Probabilistic analysis requires different tools and different skills.
How do CFOs actually overcome these obstacles? What's the path through? Dr. Lian Zhou.
Incremental proof of value. Don't try to boil the ocean. Pick one significant decision category. Build the intelligence infrastructure for that decision. Demonstrate measurable improvement. Use that success to justify the next investment. I worked with a CFO who started with pricing decisions alone. Within 18 months, the decision intelligence system for pricing was producing quantifiable margin improvement. That became the template, and the budget justification, for extending to capital allocation, then supply chain optimization, then M&A evaluation. 5 years in, finance owns decision infrastructure across most significant enterprise decisions. But it started with one decision type and scaled from there.
Maria Alvarez.
I'll add, invest in data quality early. Nothing undermines strategic finance credibility faster than a recommendation based on bad data. If you're going to advise on decisions, your data foundation must be impeccable. The CFOs who succeed treat data quality as a strategic priority, not an IT project. They staff it, fund it, and monitor it personally.
Let's look forward. If this transformation continues, what does the finance function look like in 5 to 10 years? Jonas, start us off.
I see 3 structural shifts. First, embedded finance. Rather than a centralized function that serves the enterprise, finance capabilities embed directly into business units and decision processes. The finance business partner isn't an advisor to the decision, they're a participant in the decision. Second, continuous intelligence. The monthly close becomes less relevant. Financial intelligence is generated continuously, with real-time visibility into performance and position. Decisions don't wait for reporting cycles. Third, outcome accountability. Finance is measured not just on accuracy and compliance, but on the quality of decisions they supported. Did the recommendations produce expected results? Did the decisions improve over time? Finance becomes accountable for enterprise decision quality.
Kwame, what does the technology stack look like?
The core components are already emerging. Unified data layer. A single semantic model connecting financial and operational data, enabling analysis across traditional boundaries. This exists conceptually but is rarely implemented well. Decision workflow platform. Systems that route decisions to owners, assemble relevant information, capture choices, and track outcomes. This replaces ad hoc decision processes with instrumented decision infrastructure. Scenario Intelligence Engine. AI-powered capability to rapidly model scenarios, surface key sensitivities, and quantify uncertainty. This converts gut feel strategic discussions into quantified option analysis. Continuous learning system. Automated capture of decision outcomes, feedback to predictive models, and pattern identification across decision categories. This enables systematic improvement in decision quality over time. These components exist today in various forms. The maturation is in integration, connecting them into coherent decision infrastructure rather than fragmented point solutions.
Dr. Zhou, how does AI specifically change the CFO role?
AI amplifies the strategic mandate, if embraced correctly. What AI does well: pattern recognition in large datasets, rapid scenario generation, anomaly detection, continuous monitoring at scale, preliminary analysis and synthesis. What AI doesn't replace: judgment about what questions to ask, contextual interpretation of results, stakeholder navigation, ethical evaluation of options, final decision authority. The CFO who embraces AI becomes more strategic, not less relevant. They're freed from analytical drudgery and can focus on judgment, framing, and stakeholder alignment. The CFO who fears AI or ignores it will find their function automated around them, not because AI replaces strategic judgment, but because it makes traditional finance tasks so efficient that organizations need far fewer people to do them.
Maria, how does governance evolve?
Governance becomes algorithmic and continuous rather than periodic and manual. Today, governance often means quarterly reviews, annual audits, periodic certifications. In the future, governance is embedded in systems. Data quality is monitored continuously. Decision audit trails are generated automatically. Policy compliance is enforced by architecture, not by review. This is more robust than current governance, and it frees human governance resources to focus on judgment calls and edge cases rather than routine verification. The challenge is building these systems thoughtfully. Algorithmic governance can encode biases, create rigidity, or produce false confidence. The governance function must govern the governance systems, ensuring they actually accomplish their purpose.
Let me ask a provocative question. If finance owns decision infrastructure and AI handles much of the analytical work, do we need fewer finance professionals? Is this a threat to careers? Jonas Richter.
Fewer people doing traditional tasks, yes. Fewer people overall? Not necessarily. The scope is expanding. Traditional finance might require 100 people. Strategic finance with AI might require 80 people, but serving a broader mandate with higher impact. The headcount might shrink, but the influence grows. The threat is to specific roles, manual data reconciliation, routine report production, basic analytical tasks. These will be automated. The opportunity is for roles that require judgment, context, and human connection, strategic business partnership, stakeholder advisory, complex negotiation, ethical evaluation. These expand.
Dr. Lien Zhou.
I'd add, the competition isn't finance professional versus AI. It's finance professional with AI versus finance professional without AI. The ones who embrace the tools will outcompete the ones who don't.
Let's close with our tactical edge segment. One concrete action for CFOs and finance leaders to take this week. Dr. Zhou.
Review your most recent board presentation. Ask, does this help the board make decisions, or just inform them about what already happened? If it's primarily backward-looking, redesign the next presentation to lead with decisions required, options available, and finance's recommended path.
Maria.
Audit the data sources behind your most important strategic recommendation from last quarter. Can you trace every key number to a trusted source? If you find gaps or uncertainties, those are your priority data governance investments.
Jonas.
Calculate how much of your finance team's time is spent on compliance versus strategic analysis. If compliance exceeds 50%, identify one compliance process to automate or streamline this quarter. You need to free capacity before you can expand scope.
Kwame.
Pick one significant decision that recurs quarterly. Document the current process. What information is assembled? By whom? How is it delivered? What's the decision cycle time? That documentation is the baseline for building decision infrastructure, and you'll likely find immediate improvement opportunities just by making the process visible.
Let me synthesize what we've explored today. The CFO role is evolving from scorekeeper to strategist, from reporting what happened to shaping what should happen next. This isn't optional. Data abundance, strategic velocity, and CEO expectations are pulling finance toward the decision intelligence mandate. CFOs who don't make the transition will find their function marginalized. Making the transition requires new capabilities, economic thinking, narrative skill, calibrated uncertainty, strategic partnership, and new infrastructure, decision inventories, curated intelligence packages, outcome measurement systems. The obstacles are real: legacy systems, talent gaps, cultural resistance, regulatory burden, functional turf protection. But they're navigable through incremental proof of value, data quality investment, and relationship repair. The future finance function is embedded, continuous, and accountable for decision quality, not just analytical accuracy. AI amplifies this mandate for those who embrace it. To our panelists, Dr. Lien Zhou, Maria Alvarez, Jonas Richter, and Kwame Mensah, thank you for another rich conversation.
Thank you, Nakul.
Great discussion.
My pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Next week on the Intelligence Edge, the Chief Intelligence Officer, role or responsibility? We'll explore who should own decision intelligence when it spans the entire organization, and whether CIO is a title or a distributed accountability. Until then, I'm Nakel Nikima. Make better decisions.